Welcome to the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.
Endless journey of delight and profitability.
I think some people use it as a derogatory term towards accountants.
Being visible to the employees is important.
Welcome back to another episode on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. So as you know, if you've been listening to the show, the last two episodes we've featured Greg Flickinger, who is the chairman of the OpEx Leadership Network, as well as the Group Vice President of Manufacturing Operations at H-E-B Grocery Stores. So in this third and final discussion with Greg on this three-part series, we're focusing on boosting employee engagement through training. So again, welcome back to the episode, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you've shared with us that you're pretty passionate about engaging employees and building that healthy corporate culture. So how important are training and upskilling when it comes to the challenges manufacturing leaders face today?
That's absolutely critical, as we all know. The automation is now entering the workforce, and so we really have to put time and effort into upskilling our workforce so they can participate and grow within this emerging manufacturing base, or everything we're dealing with today is automation-based or technology-based. So we need to put the time and effort into getting our team members, our partners, our employees up to speed. And when I think about engagement, so go back to the engagement framework that OpEx had created as one of the work streams. Engagement has 47 elements. If you really look at all of the different components and pieces to enabling or creating engagement. And when I think about engagement, it's really not us going out and motivating someone. What we need to do as leaders is we're responsible for removing the barriers that are inhibiting someone from becoming engaged. So that's a very different way to look at it. We think about people going out and giving the rah-rah speech and creating conditions to force people to become motivated or engaged. But in reality, it's quite the opposite. As leaders, we need to remove those barriers. And when you remove the barriers or lower the activation energy, then a person now has the ability to make the choice to become engaged. So really, Derek, it's all about choice. And when you think about the engagement framework, it's based on understanding these 47 elements. What barriers do people have? And when you think about how things are changing with technology and the need to upskill, well, that's a barrier for someone to become engaged. So as a leadership group, we're responsible for at least giving them the opportunity to upskill themselves. We can't do it for them, but we can provide the opportunity if they make the choice to learn and to grow within the organization.
So could someone go to the OpEx Leadership Network site and find those 47 elements that you're talking about, or is that a Gallup method?
Yes, it was made for industry by industry. And so the way the framework was created is we found a number of leaders who were not only passionate, but had led cultural change, cultural transformation, and most had experience in one or more areas of high-performance work systems. So that group came together literally for 4 years until we came.
Wow.
4 years till we came with the output, which was a 82-page white paper, which is available on the site, as well as the engagement framework itself in a one-page form. There are also some other collateral. There's some videos. I believe there's still some links to webinars. So there's a lot of information around it, but the white paper is available that has all of the content.
Wow, thanks. And that's a free resource too. So
yes,
listeners, listen up. On to our next question. Can education and certification opportunities boost employee engagement?
Back to what we just discussed,
right.
Absolutely. Because it can, but it has to be applied. So we have to be sure that we are giving people the information that makes a difference in their work or a difference in their job. Back to what we talked in a previous podcast, does it make it easier? Do I feel like I can contribute to a different level? Can I grow my career? But absolutely, it plays a very important role.
So going back to our previous discussion on the IoT and what I've seen in the past few years as a current learning trend in micro-learning and just-in-time learning and more personalized learning schemes. How do you feel that you can effectively train people using AR wearables, and what are the risks?
Sure. A couple of things come to mind, really, too. The one thing that I worry about as we look to potentially deploying this is content. We got to have the right content to get to the person, the content they need when they need it. So a lot of time and effort is going to be spent in creating that content because the device is the device. It does me no good unless I have the content to back it up. So as a leadership group, most of our time and effort is really going to be focused on the content and getting the right information in their hands when they need it. Otherwise, the device really does me no good. So content is one piece. And then the second piece I think about, which companies like Vuzix and others are tackling, is it comfortable? Does it impair me? Does it encumber me? Or is it just purely not comfortable if it's a glass is it comfortable on my head? And so it needs to be designed with the functional use in mind. And that's everything to where's the display? Does it fit on my head well? Is it out of balance? And so it has to be comfortable. And if it's not, then people will reject it. So if any of those two things happen, then the person will reject it and it'll be no good. So it's up to us to provide the content and provide a wearable or a device that doesn't impede the person doing their role.
So this is where learning professionals and reliability engineers can unite. Learning professionals can curate the right content, and at least you can work with professionals to make sure that you're curating the right content for your user. And then designing for reliability, ergonomics, human use. Greg, do you have any advice for managers on learning for wearables or learning in general that you'd like to give to our listeners before we close our final episode with you?
Sure. And this would go whether it's wearables or not. So wearables are a vehicle or a way to get information to people. So regardless of how we do it, what I've learned through my work with the Key Change Institute, Rayut Schwartz-Hebron is the founder of that institute out in San Diego, California, is people really, truly learn and understand through experiential learning, something that I know you're well aware of. And so if we want people to learn, it's not go into a classroom and try to fill their head with knowledge that they're not going to remember. They're really going to use it and remember it if it's used in place. If I'm actively using the knowledge to do my work, if I'm applying it, then I will retain it. Or I'll retain enough of it that I can work my way through it. But otherwise, if we just spend money in a classroom and then put people out in the environment, they're going to have to go back and look it up anyways because they won't remember it. So experiential learning sticks. It really falls into the implicit memory, which really tends to be retained much better than the explicit memory. So I guess what I would say in summary is information is learned when we need it. Information isn't learned when we don't need it. We don't retain it.
I've loved that we've been able to integrate some of my passion, which is about learning and performance improvement, in our conversations with Greg today. One thing that we definitely stress in the learning profession now is the 70-20-10 model, which states that you'll learn about 10% in the class, 70% when you execute on the job, and about 20% is that social learning, that water cooler learning, that, hey, do you remember how to do that Excel formula type of learning from your partner next to you. That could also be considered the voice through the wearables, the OEM through the wearables. That would be that peer learning that's happening right there. So it's just really interesting talking to you about trends and about issues that companies are facing today, and just really appreciate you joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
So that'll wrap up our third and final series, speaking with Greg Flickinger. So thank you so much. And so how'd it go for you? Pretty easy podcasting?
No problem.
No problem. Okay, podcast listeners. Well, as always, please visit the show notes, and we're going to have a couple resource links on there for you to learn more about the topics we discussed in this episode, which was, boosting employee engagement through training. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another episode of the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.
See you next time.
Hey, listeners, one more thing before you go. If you have any feedback for the show, or you have maybe some suggestions for upcoming topics you'd love to hear about, we'd like to hear from you. So there's two ways to get in contact with us. The first is on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @LCE_today, so be sure to follow us. And then the other way is to email the show at podcast@lce.com. Once again, thank you for joining the show, and we look forward to more episodes on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.